not okay. I can fake it. I do the best I can. But I'm not okay. I feel like I'm just going through the motions. Doing what I have to do because I have to do it. That's it. No purpose. Nothing to strive for beyond just getting through the day, the week, the month. That's just the state I'm in right now. Don't get me wrong. My life isn't complete, unending misery. I still enjoy things. I still try to make time for things I like. There's tons of simple pleasures I indulge in, but it all just feels like something to do to pass the time. It doesn't erase that quiet ennui that lingers in the back of my mind. Nothing ever does. People tend to call me a workaholic. I don't think that's true. Yes, I do spend more time at work than I probably should, but only because it's better than staying at home alone. Although, admittedly, my work probably doesn't contribute positively to my headspace. I work at a funeral home. Specifically, my job is to make the bodies look nice before they're put out for viewings or services. It's not unpleasant work. I don't hate it, but it's not for the faint of heart. People often say that this line of work can make you numb, and that's true to an extent. But I'm still human. When I come into work and there's someone who was obviously taken before their time, either from an accident, illness, or something else, I still feel for them. After all, there's ultimately very little that separates us and them, and sooner or later, we all end up in their place. Please, don't think of me as some socially awkward shut-in who spends more time amongst the dead than the living. That description probably isn't entirely inaccurate. But I swear that outside of work, I'm normal. I've got friends, and I do make time to see them whenever I'm not too busy. I'm somewhat close with my family. They live on the other side of the country, so I don't visit them as often as I should. But I keep in touch. Really, my social life is normal. Not active, but normal. Nadine would say otherwise. But she's a bit more extroverted than I am. She thrives on social activity. I prefer it in measured doses. Although I suppose there is a part of me that wishes I could be like her. Nadine is just so carefree, so full of life. It's like everything just works out for her. She goes through life like she's completely untethered. I know she probably isn't. Everyone has insecurities, fears, doubts. That's life. But she seems so unaffected by it all. Man, I've always kind of envied that. I wished I could be the same. I suppose that's part of why I agreed to go to her Halloween party. I thought that maybe, just for a little bit, some of her energy might make me feel okay for a little while. It's worked before. For a few hours at a time, I can step out of my element and fill the void with other people. It never lasts. They wear me down eventually. But it helps for a little while. I just finished up with a long shift. We had a new client come in near the end of the day. A man in his late 30s. He was one of those cases that broke my heart. Apparently, he lost his life during a home invasion. It was a real tragedy. Not just because of the senseless loss of life, and not just because he died young, either. As far as I knew, he didn't really have anyone. No wife, no kids. He'd been some kind of salesman, from what I'd heard. And unfortunately, he wasn't the first of his kind that I'd seen. Men like him come in from time to time. Anywhere between 30 to 60. They come with nice, expensive suits to be buried in, but no one to see them off at the end. And the money they worked so hard for, now useless. I always thought that was a tragic way to live. Although I suppose I can't really judge them, can I? I'm probably not much different. Anyway, I'd been working on him for most of the afternoon. His body had some pretty deep cuts that I had to take care of, since his mother, his one surviving relative, had requested an open casket. It had been a lot of work, and I was exhausted. I wanted nothing more than to flop down onto the couch and fall asleep. And I was in the middle of doing exactly that when I saw Nadine's name pop up on my phone. I may or may not have just put on a TV show, so the intrusion was a little unwelcome, but I still answered it. Hey, Adrian! You finally done with the graveyard shift? Great. Puns. God damn it, Nadine. Yeah, just got off work, I said. What's going on? Just wanted to check in. I'm having some friends over this weekend. Sort of like a Halloween costume party. I figured you'd want to come. I mean, you are basically my spookiest friend. Gee, thanks. You're welcome. So, are you in? I honestly wanted to say no, but I thought better of it. I hadn't seen Nadine in a few weeks, and I could probably stand to get out of the house. Besides, I liked Halloween, and a Halloween party didn't sound like a bad idea. Yeah, I guess. She let out a squeal. It was a full-on squeal of delight, before rattling off the details at a speed that would make Eminem burst into tears and proclaim her to be the next Messiah. I had to ask her to repeat it all twice before I got it down. She and some friends, and since this was Nadine, there were going to be a lot of friends, were meeting up at a local bar she liked to frequent. All in all, it was par for the course. Everyone's going in costume, so make sure you're wearing something. And don't just come as a spooky coroner, she said. I told her I would, although I honestly had no idea what I'd even wear. Not that I minded dressing up in a costume. I just hadn't done it in a few years. Still, I was kind of looking forward to it. It was something to get a little bit excited for. Nadine's parties usually were. When Saturday rolled around, I showed up at the bar around 8-ish. It was a seedy little dive called the Margarita Palace that was probably a big deal back in the 70s, but had long since fallen off. The parking lot was cracked and full of potholes. The logo had long since worn off the awning above the door, and the interior decoration looked like someone had tried to fuse Las Vegas and a tropical resort, but gave up halfway through. The place usually stank of cigarette smoke, and had a brigade of old barflies who were almost always there. But Nadine loved the place. She was waiting for me when I arrived, dressed in what I can only attempt to describe as a sexy bird costume. "Yo, Adrian!" she cheered, the moment she saw me walk in, doing the absolute worst Sylvester Stallone impression I'd ever heard. She bounced toward me, clearly already drunk, and pulled me into a hug. "Hey," I said, and that was all I managed to say before morbid curiosity took over. "What are you supposed to be?" "I'm a harpy," she said, doing a little twirl. "See? I've got wings and feathers and all that." Ah, now I saw it. "What about you?" Evil doctor?" I said, pointing to the lab coat I was wearing, which I had admittedly already owned. Nadine gave a nod of approval before dragging me to the bar to get me a drink. It was a good start to the night. The party was, for the most part, fun. A rotating cast of faces, some familiar, some not, most of them in costume, came and went. Nadine kept buying me drinks, and I kept drinking them. Sobriety became a distant memory, but I did have fun. The crowd got to be a little much at times, but I was handling it all right. And that was when I saw him. He was tall, with rugged features. thick, dark hair, and a 5 o'clock shadow. He had deep-set, almost sunken eyes that watched me with an intensity that would have been the thing to make my skin crawl, if it weren't for the one other detail about him. I recognized him. Specifically, I recognized him from work. I'd been embalming him the other day, when Nadine had called me. At first, I was sure I was mistaken. There was no way in hell he could be there. But I was sure it was him. I remembered that he'd had a little scar on his jaw. His scruff highlighted it, because the hair wouldn't grow there. This man had the exact same scar. He stared at me, then playfully raised his glass at me, almost as if he was toasting me. I suddenly felt sick. The bar, which had already been bordering on too loud, suddenly felt claustrophobic and deafening. My heart rate spiked. My breathing got heavier. That man was staring right at me. "Adrian?" Nadine's voice grounded me, and I looked over at her. "You alright?" "Yeah," I lied. Of course I lied. How the hell was I supposed to tell Nadine that there was a dead man sitting in the booth over there? I wasn't even entirely sure I believed my own eyes. I think I've had a little too much, that's all. I think I'm gonna call it a night." "What? Really? Come on, we're just getting started." "Sorry. I got work tomorrow. This was a lot of fun," I said half-heartedly. "I'll just call a cab." She pouted, but didn't argue. She just gave me another hug and thanked me for coming out, before disappearing to mingle with the other guests. With a shaking hand, I took out my phone and called for a cab. I kept glancing up at the man sitting in that booth. He moved his drink around the table, but he never took a sip. Then, after studying me for a moment, he got up and started walking toward me. My heart skipped a beat. Immediately, I got up, stumbling away from my seat. The bar was crowded, but suddenly, I felt so alone. He was getting closer. I thought of running, trying to make it to the door and get out into the parking lot. But even drunk, I knew that was a bad idea. Leaving the dubious safety of a crowded bar and fleeing into what would most likely be an empty parking lot sounded like a really good way to get killed. Or worse. Besides, he was by the door. I knew I couldn't get past him. All I could do was helplessly retreat into the crowd and watch as he effortlessly weaved between them, cat-like and calm. The closer he got, the more I saw that confirmed what I feared. I could see the thick makeup caked onto his skin. We added to conceal the pallor of death, to make the corpses look more alive, so their loved ones can see them as they remembered them, not as they are. His eyes were sunken and bloodshot. They didn't seem to be looking at me. There was no life in them. He was dead. Oh God, he really was dead. I backed into someone and felt someone push me away, toward the dead man. "Watch it!" Some old barfly grunted at me before shoving me away, toward the dead man making his way toward me. The bar was too crowded. I had nowhere to run. I couldn't get away, but I didn't have it in me to start screaming yet because I wasn't entirely sure if I wasn't going crazy. His hand closed around my arm. Firm, cold, wrong. Those dead eyes stared into mine, as his lips curled into a smile that was meant to be reassuring. "Relax. I just want to chat." His voice was low and raspy, like he'd been smoking 6 packs a day from the moment he was born. I couldn't respond, My breathing was too heavy, too panicked. He guided me to a nearby empty table and coaxed me down. "Breathe. It's alright," he said. "I know. This is probably a shock for you, huh? I get that. I really do. But I'm not here to cause you any trouble, Adrian." He let go of my arm, putting up his hands as if in surrender. That was when I finally found my voice. How? You're about to say dead. I'm not. This guy? Yeah, he's absolutely dead. No question about that. I've hollowed out so much of him, there's no way he's still in here. But I am alive. I just stared at him, trying to process what he just said. Hollowed out? The thing sitting across from me contorted its lips into a grin. It chuckled. It was a dry, rattling sound, like gravel being shaken around a plastic container. This is a costume party, isn't it? Well, I'm in costume. Oh God, no. Suddenly, I wish this man had just come back from the dead, because this felt so much worse. What? Was the only word I could think to get out. The man across from me sighed. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but I'm not the kind of guy who gets the warmest of receptions when I go out on my own. So, unfortunately, I needed a costume to step out into polite company. That's just how it is, I'm afraid. He paused and, for a moment, seemed to gauge my reaction before he continued. Look, I feel like I'm starting off on the wrong foot here. I'm not here to scare you or antagonize you. I'm just looking for a friend. Let me start over. I know your name. You're Adrian. So why don't I tell you mine? You can call me Christopher. Does that sound okay to you? No. No, it did not sound okay to me. None of this was okay to me. The thing sitting across from me just told me he was wearing a dead man as a costume. What part of this was okay? Still, I nodded. Christopher, I repeated. That's right. Look, I hate to bother you. I do. But you're exactly the kind of person I need right now. I mean, the work you did on this body? Exquisite. The embalming was a little much for me. Rendered some of the best bits inedible. But this body is in excellent shape. And it's really all thanks to you. My, costumes tend to degrade pretty fast. It's not always convenient to get a new one. But I'm hoping that a friend like you might be able to help me with that. Friend? This thing wanted to be my friend? You're joking, I said quietly. Actually, I'm dead serious. And no, that's not a pun, he said. He extended an arm toward me and gently rolled up his sleeve, revealing the bare skin beneath. I could see where the makeup ended just below his wrist. The skin there was pale and distorted, like something was moving beneath his flesh. He flexed his fingers and I saw the skin shift, tears opening up and exposing whatever was beneath. You could already see the wear and tear, Christopher said. I know this body won't last forever, but if I can at least make it last a little while, that would be nice. I looked up at him. He discreetly lowered his sleeve again. You hunted me down, cornered me here, just to ask if I can fix your skin suit? Like I said, you do good work. Look, I admit this intrusion probably is a little sudden, but try and see things from my perspective here. How else could I realistically approach you about this? Would you have preferred I came looking for you without my costume on? I don't think that would have ended well. I'm doing the best I can here. I don't care, I said. I don't know what the hell you are, or why the hell you'd think I'd help you, but I'm not doing it. Admittedly, half the reason I said that was because I still wasn't entirely convinced that any of what I was seeing was real. Although, part of it was also simply not wanting to be involved with something that was wearing another human being's corpse. Christopher's mouth contorted into a frown. His dead eyes stared back at me, expressionless. That's unfortunate, he said. And it leaves me in a very difficult position. This body won't last much longer. Soon enough, I'll need to find another. It won't be difficult, I suppose. Plenty to choose from. He stopped and tapped his chin as if he were thinking. You know, a mortician would be a very good choice of body. It'd make it easy to find my next costume when the time was up. And, since I've made the mistake of confiding in you, I'll need to tie up loose ends. His lips curled into a rictus grin that showed off brown, rotting gums. My heart rate spiked again. What? Oh, come now. Don't be naive. He leaned in closer to me. I wouldn't need to do it right now. But a few costumes from now? With a fresh face? You'd never know it was me until it was too late. That's a scary thought, isn't it? I was starting to hyperventilate again. He reached out one cold hand and cupped my chin with it, forcing me to look into his hollow eyes. Wouldn't you hate for that to happen? I sure would. I could only nod in response. I thought so. But if you've made up your mind... I can fix you, I stammered. I just need some supplies. I can do it back at home. Really? You do that? He asked, his voice dripping with faux awe. How sweet. Well, it just so happens that I saw you calling for a cab a few minutes ago. So, what are the odds that they're here by now? Let's go check. He finally let me go and got up. He cracked his neck. I heard the bones popping underneath the skin. Then he led me outside. Sure enough, my cab was waiting. He opened the passenger side door for me. After you, he said softly. I glanced at him before obliging and getting in. I wish I could say that the ride home was anything but unsettling, but I'd be lying. Christopher sat right behind me, and I couldn't help but imagine him poised and ready to strike in the event that I made one wrong move. That doesn't mean I didn't consider it, though. I had my phone in my pocket. Maybe I could text someone, ask them to call for help. I moved to gently slip it out of my pocket. It was close to midnight. Who would be awake? Nadine was the first person that came to mind. I reluctantly brought up her number and sent a hasty text. Creep is following me home. Call 911. The message registered as sent, but there was no sign of a reply. As we drove, it just sat on my phone, unread. I tried sending a second message, then a third. No luck. God damn it, Nadine. I tried a few other contacts, but no one answered. The cab stopped in front of my apartment. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and quietly paid the driver. I looked up at him and thought about asking him for help, but he just smiled at me, wished me a good night, and that was it. A moment later, I was standing on the curb with Christopher, who stared expectantly at me. Did he know what I'd done? I wasn't sure. I swallowed heavily and started through the entryway, before leading Christopher up to my apartment, quietly wondering all the while if I would ever step foot outside again.
Nice place you got here,
he said as he stepped inside. He studied the photographs on my wall, mostly pictures of my family, although not a lot of me. I've never liked having my picture taken.
Where should I sit?
He asked. Kitchen table? I said quietly. He nodded and took off his suit jacket, followed by the silk button-up shirt he'd been wearing underneath, exposing his pale flesh held together by stitches. When I'd put him back together the other night, his body had been toned. He'd taken care of it in life. But now, his torso was bloated, sagging, and deformed. The sight of it made me flinch, but I steeled myself and went to go get some supplies. They weren't the best supplies, but I had a needle and some decent thread. I figured it would do in a pinch. Christopher had sat down by the time I came back with them.
Start with the torso,
he said.
That's the weakest part.
He gestured to his stomach, at the seam of the Y incision the coroner had left on him, while the police had been examining his body. Right, I said quietly, and got to work.
Gentle,
he warned.
And don't get any funny ideas.
His belly twitched and rolled, as if something inside was breathing. My hands were shaking as I worked. And when Christopher spoke again, I almost jumped.
To answer your question, yes, that is me in there,
he said.
And no, I'd prefer if you didn't look.
I glanced up at him, about to ask how he'd known what I was thinking, before he gave me my answer.
It was obvious from the look on your face.
Right, I said. If you don't mind my asking, what exactly are you?
I don't know if there is a name for us,
he admitted.
My kind won't typically deal with people. It's a shame. You're a hell of a lot more interesting than we are. But no, they're too afraid. Me? I don't live in fear. Life's too short. There's too much to see. Too much to do. I can't just hide from it all.
So you just go around living in corpses? What, trying to live it up?
Is that so wrong?
He asked. Maybe. Depends on where you get the corpses.
Wherever I can,
he said.
What? Like you wouldn't do the same? You'd be okay just living a meaningless life? Going through the motions? Doing what you think you have to do because you think you have to do it? That's it. No purpose. Nothing to strive for beyond just getting through the day, the week, the month. What a pathetic way to live.
I paused, but didn't say anything.
I don't get how anything could handle that kind of monotonous boredom. What's the word for it?
Ennui, I said. He nodded.
That's it. Ennui. That is a hell I can't endure.
I finished up with his chest and started on his arms next, gently mending the tears in his flesh. I could see something moving beneath the broken skin, something running through the arm in place of where the bone would usually be. It looked like a carapace of some sort, brown and hairy. That must have been the real Christopher. I shuddered, imagining what the rest of him looked like, and looked away as I continued my work. Are you gonna kill me when I'm done? I asked.
Why would I do that?
You made your intentions pretty clear back at the bar, I thought.
I said what I needed to say to get what I wanted," he replied. "That's all."
Did that mean he was never planning on killing me? Or was he just downplaying it now that he was getting what he wanted? None of what he said answered my question. There wasn't much I could do about that. It took around 2 hours to make my repairs to Christopher's costume. And when I was done, I can't say he looked that much better than when I'd started. But when he shuffled into my bathroom to admire my handiwork, he seemed satisfied.
"Good as new. Or as close as it's gonna get," he said. "See? Was that so difficult?"
I didn't answer him. I just watched as he collected his shirt and began to redress himself. I just watched and waited.
"I'll try and take care of it for now. Although, odds are, we'll be seeing each other again in a few days. Gotta keep this body tuned up as long as possible."
"Sure," I said quietly. Great. So he was planning on coming back. On one hand, that meant he probably wasn't going to kill me. On the other, he was coming back. At least he didn't stick around for long. Once he was dressed, he winked at me and headed for the door.
"I'll be seeing you, Adrian,"
he said, and then he was gone. Half an hour later, Nadine finally texted me back. God damn it, Nadine. The next few days were quiet. I didn't see hide nor hair of Christopher. I almost started to wonder if I really had just made up the whole encounter in my mind. Maybe that would be the end of it. God, I hope that would be the end of it. It wasn't. He was back again a few days later, waiting for me in the entryway of my apartment as I was leaving for work. I saw him as I stepped out of the elevator, grinning at me, and looking even more like a corpse than he had the last time I'd seen him. I froze on the spot, every muscle in my body going tense.
"Hey, buddy,"
he said playfully.
"Sorry to ambush you like this, but I was wondering if you'd be able to give me a little touch-up."
He passed a hand over his face.
"The makeup looked good, but it's got a shelf life, you know what I mean?"
Unfortunately, I did. I need to get to work, was the only thing I could say. I can't help you.
No, I get that,"
he assured me.
"I do. And trust me, I'm not saying you need to drop everything right now. But if you could bring the supplies home with you this evening, I'd greatly appreciate it."
That rictus grin returned and sent a chill through me. I hesitated, but it was hard to say no to him. Especially since this time, there wasn't really anyone else around. Sure, there was the street outside, but that felt like it was miles and miles away.
"What do you say? Feel like helping out a friend?"
I opened my mouth to respond, but Christopher just cut me off.
"Great. Thanks. You're the best."
It put a cold hand on my shoulder, before turning to disappear out onto the street again, vanishing without another word. I stood frozen for a moment, shaking a little before taking a deep breath and going into work. It was easy to swipe the supplies I needed. We had plenty of makeup, and while I wasn't the only mortician on staff, I was well enough alone most of the time. So nobody noticed me slipping the shade I'd used on that particular John Doe into my jacket pocket. Along with one other thing, just for my own peace of mind. A syringe of embalming fluid. Normally, we used a pump, since the system that normally keeps blood circulating through the body always tends to be non-functional on my clients for some weird reason. But we kept a few syringes on hand for drawing samples if needed. I just needed to fill one up and put it in my pocket. It was easy. but I still kept waiting for someone to boldly tear into the room and declare me a thief. Part of me hoped they would, because then I wouldn't need to go home, where I knew he'd be waiting for me. And he was waiting. He was standing by the doorway of my building when I got back that evening, smiling at me with brown gums that were starting to visibly decay. I could smell him as we rode up to my apartment in the elevator. The husk he wore was rotting around him. Breathing was getting difficult, but I kept my mouth shut, figuratively speaking, at least.
"This is exciting,"
Christopher said as he sat down in the same chair as before.
"I've never kept a costume for this long before. I've been having a hell of a time out there, you know? It's been a real blast."
"I'm sure," I replied tonelessly as I set to work. His skin was clammy, cold, and starting to sag. I could feel the flesh squishing beneath it as I applied the makeup.
"I went to see a play the other day. Have you ever seen a play, Adrian? I've always thought it would be so exciting to go to the theater. I finally had my chance. God, this really is the way to live."
I didn't really humor him as he talked, although I didn't mind the fact that he was talking either. I mean, all things considered, there are far worse things for a stealing creature to discuss than its love of the theater. If anything, his excitement was kind of, I don't know, cute? Wholesome? Not really sure what word to use. Either way, the touch-up to his makeup was relatively quick and painless. Like before, he went to look at himself in the mirror when I was done.
"Good as new,"
he said, before looking at me with that rictus grin.
"Hell of a job, Adrian."
Yeah. Happy to help," I murmured. Frankly, I didn't think he looked that much better, but I wasn't going to tell him that. Theater nerd or no, I couldn't forget what he really was.
"Hey, we should catch a play sometime,"
he said.
"You like plays, don't you? You've got that look to you."
I guess? It's been a while since I saw one.
"We'll fix that,"
he promised. 5 minutes later, he was off again, vanishing off into the night to do God only knows what. Probably something inane. I suppose I couldn't fault him for that. As much as I didn't particularly like having him around, I had to admit, if this was all he wanted to do, then what was the harm in helping him? Speaking of which, that body of his was getting pretty decayed. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I was sure I already knew how our next conversation was going to go. He was probably going to ask me to help him find a new body. If that was the case, I was sure I could figure something out. We got our fair share of clients that nobody would really miss. Addicts, the homeless, seniors who had nobody left. People who deserved better than to be forgotten. I can't say I would have felt great about handing one of those bodies over to Christopher. But in anticipation of him asking, I was already starting to consider the logistics of it, both in terms of functionality and morality. Would it be so wrong to give a dead body to a creature that just wanted to go out and live a normal life? Christopher had previously threatened me, yes, but he'd implied that it was just an empty threat, right? Could I help him out? Not just functionally, but could I do it morally? I genuinely wasn't sure. There was a stranger waiting outside my apartment building 4 days later. I saw them lingering around as I was coming home from work. She was scrawny, with messy, wispy, platinum blonde hair, and intense, sunken eyes. Probably a homeless person or an addict. Unfortunately, they're all too common a sight in my city. I initially didn't pay them any mind. Not until I heard their voice.
"Hey, Adrian, got a sec?"
That raspy, familiar voice. I jumped and turned, expecting to see the rotting face of Chris staring back at me. Instead, his familiar rictus grin was spread across the lips of that unfamiliar young woman.
Sorry, I had to make a slight change,
the woman said.
I'm sure you noticed it, but good old Christopher was starting to show his mileage. So I traded in for a new model. Say hello to Janine.
I stared at the woman and felt my stomach churn. Where exactly did you find her? I asked.
Don't worry about that. I've got plenty of sources,
they said, before gesturing towards my apartment. I could see track marks on one of the dead woman's arms.
Come on, I need some patching up. Then, I've got a surprise for you.
I hesitated before letting Janine in. As soon as we set foot in my apartment, Janine was already stripping off her hoodie, revealing a body that should have been thin and emaciated, but was instead bloated in the middle, just like Christopher's had. I could see deep gashes in her flesh, too. Gashes that looked identical to the ones I'd seen on Christopher's body when he'd first shown up at the funeral home.
Feels good to change things up,
the creature wearing Janine said.
I actually kind of prefer a female body to a male body, you know?
I'm sure, I said quietly, before going to get my supplies. The mental image of the gashes in Janine's body lingered in my mind, and I knew she'd been killed the same way Christopher had been. They had listed that as a home invasion. Was it? Or was it something else? The thing inside of him had known what I'd been doing to the body. Had it been inside Christopher the entire time I'd been working on him? I couldn't be sure, but it was possible. I rejoined Janine with the needle and thread I'd used last time, as well as the makeup, and the syringe of embalming fluid. Janine sat still, waiting patiently for me to get to work, and I did exactly that. So, what exactly happened to the old body? I asked as I began to stitch the skin closed. I started at the stomach, where I knew the creature was hiding.
Like I said, it rotted,
Janine replied.
It was bound to happen eventually, but there's always a fresh one to be found.
I nodded. I see.
Isn't she pretty, too? I just love the hair. Maybe I'll dye the next body's hair this color. That could be interesting, don't you think?
Again, I nodded. I took my time finishing up with the stomach, ensuring the stitching was tight. Wouldn't want the thing inside getting out now, would we? Janine offered me an arm next, and I started to work on that. Underneath the skin, I could see the carapace of the creature that had filled her body. I could see one segmented limb burrowing through her flesh, where the bone had once been. I could see one of its joints. Do you mind if I treat the skin to make it last a little longer? I asked. Just a bit of hydration. I was thinking it might help, I said. It was a lie. I just need an excuse to grab the syringe from my pocket.
Sure. Whatever you think is best,
Janine said absent-mindedly. Don't worry, I promised as I reached for the syringe. This will help a lot. In one swift motion, I jabbed the needle into the joint of the creature buried in Janine's flesh, and I pushed the plunger all the way down. The reaction was immediate. A sudden, inhuman screech tore from Janine's throat. It ripped its arm out of my grasp and hurled me to the ground, jerking violently as it stumbled to its feet.
What did you do?
It hissed.
What did you just do?
I didn't answer. I just ran, scrambling along the ground and down the hall toward my bedroom. Behind me, I heard an animalistic snarl, a sound of pure rage. I could hear movement behind me, but I was faster. I slammed my bedroom door behind me and pressed my weight against it, as the creature wearing Janine tried to use its body to force the door open.
It burns! It burns! What did you do, Adrian? What did you do?
I could hear fingernails scratching at the door. Slow at first, then frantic.
What did you do to me?
The door shook violently. The wood buckled and splintered. Shit. It wasn't gonna hold.
Adrian!
I stumbled back as the thing wearing Janine hit the door again, knocking it partially off its hinges and fully breaking it in two. It tore through the broken wood before collapsing to the ground. The act of using its own body as a battering ram had damaged it further. Janine's face was warped and bloody. The skin was torn. One of her cheeks was missing, exposing her teeth.
Adrian.
A voice in her throat hissed as it crawled toward me. But its movements were slow, sluggish, pained. It twitched and convulsed in clear pain. I heard bones popping and breaking. The skin of Janine's back distorted and stretched, as if something underneath was struggling to get out. Then a single arachnid leg burst through. Another one followed moments later. Then another. The creature was coming out. The hollowed-out corpse of Janine slumped forward as the dying thing inside of her pulled itself free. Long, spindly legs scrambled for purchase on my wooden floor. An arachnid thorax with several black, shining eyes tore free from the body, and every single eye fixated on me. The mandibles of the creature opened, and I heard a low, rasping noise escape from it. The legs reached toward me, but couldn't reach me. The eyes went dim as the creature died, and its limbs slowly began to curl in towards its body. Soon, it was just another corpse. I burned the body last night. I decided it was better than calling the police. For what it's worth, I did enough documentation to cover my ass in case they come knocking. But somehow, I doubt they will. It was a hassle getting everything out into the woods, but fortunately, I know how to handle dead bodies. As for what was left of Janine, I buried her. Somewhere quiet and peaceful. I don't know who she was or what kind of life she led, but I'd imagine that she deserves at least that much. I wish I could say I felt good about killing that thing, whatever it was really called. I don't feel good about it. But I also don't think I made the wrong call either. Having examined the body, I'm certain that it killed both Christopher and Janine. I'm certain that it probably killed people before them, too. And it would have continued to kill until someone eventually stopped it. But I also can't help but pity it. It made its choices. They were horrible choices, but it was clearly capable of making them. And even though it was a monster, it wasn't just some mindless, evil creature. I found tickets in Janine's pocket. 2 tickets to some local production of a show I'd never heard of. I know it was going to ask me to go with it. It saw me as a friend, and I killed it. Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/JordanGroupeHorror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward, and if you decide to stay for 3 months,
I'll name a character after you, which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.